Firefighters put extreme loads on their bodies while also working in extreme environments, surrounded by heat, smoke, airborne contaminants, while all the time carrying 60 to 70 pounds of equipment in a very physically demanding job. It's no wonder why they have over a 50% injury rate with a 10-year career. There are a lot of dynamic movements associated with structural firefighters, including climbing ladders, charging fire hoses, walking up and down steps, using heavy equipment in awkward positions, lifting patients, pulling off doors with motor vehicle accidents, and many more. All of these job duties put these tactical athletes into positions of potential harm. We're going to look at 3 movements that firefighters will do every day in their career on the job, which over time could create injury in the low back, hips, knee, or ankle. The first movement we're going to talk about is a firefighter stepping off of the fire truck. And so what we're going to appreciate here is the foot landing on that step and then decelerating the weight of not only the firefighter, but also the SCBA gear in hyper dorsiflexion. The boot actually resists the ability for the ankle to go into that dorsiflexion position, depending on the type of boot that they're wearing. That second step down onto the concrete or onto the floor, the knee then goes into flexion and hip flexion as well, with lumbar and hip rotation. So we're in a single leg balance stance here as the weight gets transferred from the right foot to the left foot and into a gait walking pattern. What we often see here is actually lateral ankle sprains as they're stepping down on an uneven surface. Especially in that single leg stance phase. And so that's why balance prevention and strengthening programs are so important. Next, we're going to look at running up and down stairs. One thing that we have to remember is in a real world scenario, these firefighters are going to be wearing their SCBA gear, which is about 60 to 70 pounds of pressure on their back, which changes their center of gravity. So as we see this person running up the stairs, we can appreciate that the hips are going into extreme amounts of extension and contralateral flexion. The lumbar spine stays in pretty consistent flexion, but again, that SCBA gear changes the center of gravity, so it puts more weight through the hip rather than the quads and the lower extremity. So what we often see in these firefighters is hip flexor strains and sprains, as well as low back discomfort. As they come down the stairs, we have to remember that they have to decelerate by eccentrically contracting their quads and their hamstrings in order to decelerate that extra 60 to 70 pounds of pressure on their back. The last movement we're going to look at is a firefighter pulling the hose off of the fire truck. So they do this in real world scenarios as well as in training every single day to make sure that the fire truck is ready to go. What we can appreciate is that the load of the fire hose is added onto their SCBA gear as they're pulling it away. So the firefighter is putting the nozzle over the shoulder while they wrap their contralateral arm around the hose. There's about 40 to 60 pounds of hose as the firefighter is pulling with their left arm and rotating to the right through the lumbar spine, the hip, and the lower extremity. This provides extreme load variance, especially on that right-hand side, which could injure a disc, which could create a low back strain or sprain, or even knee involvement associated with this. There's also a very large force deficit as the fire hose drops to the ground and the firefighter rotates and starts sprinting away. So with the SCBA gear and the fire hose, there's about 120 pounds of pressure pulling that firefighter back, which they have to then sprint away from the fire truck. The prevention program needs to include a core stability as well as a core control program that includes that rotational force in order to prevent lumbar spine injury in that rotated position. This is a perfect scenario where this firefighter is running on pavement or cement, but at any point, if there's any uneven surface, then we run the risk of ankle sprains, knee strains, and hip flexor injuries.